The funeral director's voice faded into background noise as I stood beside my son's casket, my hand resting on the polished mahogany. Nathan looked peaceful, finally free from the cancer that had ravaged his body for 18 months. My eyes were swollen from 3 days of barely contained grief, and my throat burned from holding back sobs during the service. That's when Vanessa's manicured hand gripped my shoulder, her fingernails digging through my black suit jacket. "Walter, we need to talk. Now!" I turned to face my daughter-in-law, expecting perhaps a shared moment of sorrow, maybe even an embrace. Instead, her eyes were cold, calculating. She pulled me away from the casket, away from the handful of mourners still offering their condolences, into a corner of the funeral home near a wilting flower arrangement. "I've been patient enough," she hissed, her voice low but sharp as broken glass. "Nathan's gone, and I need to move forward with my life. That house is mine now, and frankly, I can't afford to keep supporting you." My mind struggled to process her words. Supporting me? "I'm giving you 30 days, she continued, crossing her arms. "Pack your things and find somewhere else to live. I've already spoken to a real estate agent. The house should sell quickly in this market, and I need the money. Stop crying and start packing, Walter. This isn't negotiable." Before we continue, please drop a comment if you've ever experienced something like this. We'd love to hear your story, and subscribe to the channel to help us grow. I stared at her, my grief momentarily suspended by sheer disbelief. Around us, Nathan's co-workers and friends glanced our way, sensing tension but unable to hear our conversation. Vanessa's mother, Dorothy, stood near the guest book, pretending not to watch while clearly monitoring every movement her daughter made. "Vanessa," I managed to say, my voice hoarse. "I don't think you understand the situation." "Oh, I understand perfectly," she snapped. "Nathan told me everything before he died. How he'd been paying your mortgage, covering your expenses, helping you stay afloat after you lost your job. Well, that ends now. I have my own life to think about, my own future. 30 days, Walter." She walked away before I could respond, her black heels clicking against the funeral home's tile floor. I watched her go, something cold and hard settling in my chest alongside my grief. She had no idea. No idea at all. Let me take you back 6 years to when this whole situation began. I met Vanessa at Nathan's company holiday party in December 2018. My son had just made junior partner at his accounting firm, and he was radiating pride as he introduced me to the woman he'd been dating for 3 months. She was beautiful, polished, and ambitious. She worked in corporate communications at a pharmaceutical company and talked enthusiastically about her 5-year career plan. "Dad runs a small consulting business," Nathan told her that night, his arm around her waist. "Financial advisory services, mostly helping small businesses with their investment strategies." It wasn't a lie, exactly. I did run a consulting business. What Nathan didn't mention, because I'd asked him not to, was that my small consulting business managed a portfolio worth just over $42 million. I'd spent 30 years building wealth through powerful investments, starting with a modest inheritance from my own father, and growing it through smart decisions, and even smarter timing during several market booms. I'd learned early in life that wealth attracted the wrong kind of attention. After my wife, Claire, died when Nathan was 12, I'd watched supposed friends and even family members suddenly become very interested in our future plans and investment opportunities. I'd raised Nathan to be financially independent, to make his own way, but I'd also set up a trust fund that would activate when he turned 30. When Nathan turned 30, I'd given him access to a monthly stipend of $5,000 from the trust. Not enough to make him lazy, but enough to help with his mortgage, to take Vanessa on nice vacations, to live comfortably while he built his career. He never told Vanessa where the extra money came from. She assumed, as I later learned, that Nathan was just exceptionally good at his job and managing their finances. The house where I'd lived for 35 years, the house where Claire and I raised Nathan, was owned by one of my holding companies. Nathan knew this. I'd shown him all the paperwork years ago, explained the structure, made sure he understood that while I lived modestly, I was far from the struggling retiree Vanessa apparently believed me to be. Their wedding in 2019 was elegant and expensive. Vanessa had invited 300 guests and spared no expense on the venue, the flowers, the 7-tier cake. Nathan had smiled throughout the day, but I caught him checking his phone during the reception, probably monitoring their bank account. I'd slipped him a check for $50,000 as a wedding gift, tucked into a card that simply read, "For your future together. Love, Dad." 3 weeks after the wedding, Nathan called me, his voice tight with stress. "Dad, Vanessa's talking about buying a bigger house. She wants something in Riverside Heights, one of those new construction places. I tried to explain our budget, but she's convinced we can afford it because of the wedding gift and our combined income. She thinks I make twice what I actually do." "Did you show her your pay stubs?" I asked. I tried. She said I must be hiding money, that accountants always have side projects and investments. She's not wrong, I guess. Because of the trust. But I can't tell her about that without explaining everything about you, and you asked me to keep it private. I should have insisted he tell her the truth then. That was my first mistake. My second mistake was increasing his trust fund distribution when he was diagnosed with pancreatic cancer in February 2023. He'd called me from the oncologist's office, his voice barely above a whisper. "It's stage 3, Dad. They're saying 12 to 18 months with aggressive treatment." I'd sat down heavily in my home office, the same office where I'd taught Nathan to play chess, where we'd talked about his college applications, where I'd held him while he cried after his mother died. "We'll fight this," I told him. "Whatever you need. The best doctors, experimental treatments, anything." And I'd meant it. I'd quietly increased his monthly distribution to $15,000 to cover the medical bills that insurance wouldn't touch, the alternative treatments, the supplements and special diets that Vanessa insisted were essential. Nathan never asked where the money came from. I think he was too tired, too scared, too focused on trying to survive. Vanessa, meanwhile, threw herself into the role of devoted wife. She posted daily updates on social media about their journey, photographing Nathan's bald head after chemotherapy, his weight loss, his brave smiles. Her friends and co-workers flooded the comments with heart emojis and prayers. She started a blog called Fighting Together and gained 10,000 followers in 6 months. What she didn't do was work. She quit her corporate communications job 3 months into Nathan's diagnosis, claiming she needed to focus on his care full-time. Nathan had been too weak to argue, and I'd bitten my tongue, watching as she spent her days at yoga classes and coffee shops, while a professional home health aide, one that I was secretly paying for, took care of my son's actual medical needs. The last time I saw Nathan conscious was 4 days before the funeral. He'd asked Vanessa to give us a few minutes alone, and she'd left reluctantly, her phone already in her hand, probably composing another touching blog post about letting father and son have their final moments. "Dad," Nathan had whispered, his hand weak in mine. "I need to tell you something about Vanessa." Save your strength, I'd said, but he'd shaken his head. She thinks I've been supporting you. I never corrected her. I'm sorry. I was too tired to fight. And she was so convinced. I should have told her about the trust, about everything, but I just couldn't. It's okay, I'd assured him. Don't worry about any of that now. The house, he'd continued, struggling to get the words out. She thinks it's in my name. She's been talking about selling it, using the money to start fresh. I tried to explain, but she wouldn't listen. Dad, I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. Those were the last coherent words my son spoke to me. He'd slipped into unconsciousness that evening and never woke up. Now, standing in my living room 3 hours after the funeral, I stared at the framed photographs covering the mantel. Nathan as a baby, as a Little League player, graduating from college on his wedding day. 34 years of life, reduced to memories and images. My phone buzzed. A text from Vanessa. Meant what I said. 30 days. Don't make this harder than it needs to be. Already contacted a property management company about listing the house. They'll be there Tuesday for photos. I set the phone down carefully, my hands trembling. Not from grief now, but from something else entirely. I walked to my study, unlocked the filing cabinet where I kept all my important documents, and pulled out a thick folder labeled Property Holdings, 847 Maple Grove Drive. Inside were the original deed, the holding company papers, 35 years of property tax receipts, all in my name, or my company's name. Vanessa had no claim to this house, none whatsoever. As I sat at my desk, going through the documents, my phone rang. The caller ID showed Gordon Phillips, my attorney and one of my oldest friends. Walter, I just heard about the funeral scene from my wife, Gordon said without preamble. His wife, Patricia, had been at the service. She said Vanessa was acting strange, pulling you aside. What's going on? I told him everything. When I finished, Gordon was silent for a long moment. Walter, I know you're grieving, and I know you want to handle this quietly, but you need to understand something. If Vanessa genuinely believes she has a legal claim to your house, she could create serious problems. She could file fraudulent paperwork, claim adverse possession, tie you up in court for months. We need to shut this down immediately. I know, I said quietly. But Gordon, I'm going to handle this my way. She humiliated me at my son's funeral, spoke to me like I was some kind of burden. I think it's time Vanessa learned exactly who she's been dealing with. What are you planning? I looked at the documents spread across my desk, then at the additional folder I'd pulled out, the one labeled Trust Fund Distributions, Nathan Brennan. Every payment, every transfer, every dollar I'd given my son to help him live comfortably, to help him fight his cancer, all documented and traceable. She works at Thorne & Associates Pharmaceutical, correct? Corporate communications. Last I heard, yes. Why? Because, I said, feeling something cold and determined settle in my chest. I think it's time we had a very public conversation about assumptions and reality. Can you have your paralegal compile all these trust fund records into a clear, readable format? Every payment, every date, every amount. Walter and Gordon. I'm going to need the contact information for her supervisor at Thorne & Associates. I believe it's time I paid my daughter-in-law a visit at her office. The next morning, I sat in Gordon's law office, watching his paralegal, a sharp young woman named Amy, arrange documents across the conference table. Each page represented a payment I'd made to Nathan through the trust fund, every transfer meticulously recorded and dated. "This is 6 years of financial support," Amy said, her finger tracing down the columns. "Monthly distributions, starting at $5,000, increasing to $15,000 during his illness. Total amount, $678,000. Gordon leaned back in his chair, studying me over his reading glasses. "Walter, I need to ask you one more time. Are you sure you want to do this publicly? We could send a formal letter to Vanessa through her attorney, present the evidence privately, and resolve this without spectacle." "She made a spectacle of me at my son's funeral," I replied quietly. "In front of his friends, his co-workers, people who respected Nathan. She told me to stop crying at my own son's funeral, Gordon. She can face the truth in front of her co-workers." Gordon sighed but nodded. "I'll have everything ready by tomorrow afternoon. But Walter, once you do this, there's no taking it back. Your privacy, your wealth, it'll all become known." "I'm 71 years old," I said. "I've spent decades hiding my success because I was afraid of people's motives. Maybe it's time I stopped hiding." That evening, Vanessa's behavior confirmed that confronting her was the right choice. She showed up at my house without warning, letting herself in with Nathan's old key. I was in the kitchen, heating up soup that I had no appetite for, when I heard her footsteps. "We need to talk about the timeline," she announced, dropping her designer purse on my kitchen counter. "I've been thinking, and 30 days might be too generous. The real estate market is hot right now, and I'd like to list by next week. Can you be out by the 15th? I turned off the stove and faced her. "Vanessa, I know this is hard for you," she interrupted, her tone suggesting she thought she was being compassionate. "But Nathan would want me to be practical. He always said I was too emotional, that I needed to think with my head. Well, I'm thinking clearly now. This house is worth at least $800,000, maybe more. After I pay off Nathan's medical debts and the funeral expenses, I should clear enough to buy a condo in Riverside Heights and have a nest egg." "Medical debts?" I asked carefully. "Don't play dumb, Walter. I know Nathan was helping you financially, and I know that meant he couldn't save as much as he should have. But that's not my fault. I did my part, taking care of him, sacrificing my career. Now it's time for me to rebuild my life." She walked through the living room, her eyes assessing the furniture, the artwork, the antique clock that had belonged to my grandfather. "Most of this stuff is pretty dated, but the realtor said staging is everything. We'll probably need to clear it all out, rent some modern furniture. Don't worry, I'll handle all of that. You just focus on finding an apartment somewhere affordable." After she left, I sat in Nathan's old bedroom, the one he'd grown up in, the one that still had his high school baseball trophies on the shelf. My phone buzzed with a text from Gordon. "Everything's ready. Are you sure about tomorrow?" I typed back, "Absolutely certain." The next day, I dressed carefully in my best suit, the charcoal grey one I'd worn to important business meetings back when I was actively managing my investments. I picked up the leather folder Gordon had prepared, containing copies of all the trust fund records, property deeds, and a few additional documents Gordon thought might be useful. Thorne and Associates Pharmaceutical occupied 3 floors of a glass and steel building downtown. The lobby was all marble and modern art, with a receptionist who looked up from her computer with a professional smile. "Good morning. How can I help you?" "I'm here to see Vanessa Brennan in corporate communications," I said. "It's a personal matter regarding her late husband." The receptionist's expression shifted to sympathy. "Oh, I heard about that. I'm so sorry for your loss. Let me call up to her department." She picked up the phone, spoke quietly, then nodded to me. 15th floor. Someone will meet you at the elevator." A young man in khakis and a button-down shirt greeted me when the elevator doors opened. "Mr. Brennan? I'm Derek. I work with Vanessa. She's actually in a department meeting right now, but she should be done in about 10 minutes. Can I get you some coffee while you wait?" "That would be nice, thank you." He led me to a waiting area with a view of the city, brought me coffee, and left me with a reassuring smile. I could hear voices from a nearby conference room, including Vanessa's, raised slightly in what sounded like animated discussion. "The campaign needs to emphasize patient outcomes," I heard her say. "We can't just focus on the science. People want to hear stories, real human experiences." The irony wasn't lost on me. She'd certainly gotten good at telling stories, at crafting narratives for public consumption. Her blog about Nathan's illness had painted her as the devoted caregiver, the suffering wife, the brave survivor. Her social media posts had shown a carefully curated version of grief, tasteful black and white photos, inspirational quotes, requests for privacy that somehow included detailed updates about her emotional journey. The conference room door opened, and several people filed out, including Vanessa. She was laughing at something a colleague had said, looking polished and professional in a navy dress and heels. Then she saw me. Her face went white, then red. "Walter, what are you doing here?" I stood up, folder in hand. "Hello, Vanessa. I thought it was time we had that conversation you wanted. About the house." "This is not the place," she hissed, glancing at her co-workers who were watching with curious expressions. "This is my workplace. You can't just show up here." "Actually, I think this is the perfect place," I said calmly. "You wanted to discuss my living arrangements, my financial situation. You made assumptions about my circumstances. I thought your colleagues might be interested in hearing the truth." "Mr. Brennan?" A woman in her 50s approached, her badge identifying her as Patricia Caldwell, Communications Director. "I'm Vanessa's supervisor. Is everything all right?" "No, Patricia, everything is not all right," I said, my voice steady. "You see, 3 days ago, at my son's funeral, Vanessa here told me I had 30 days to vacate my home. She informed me that she couldn't afford to keep supporting me, and that as the new owner of my house, she needed to sell it quickly." Patricia's eyebrows rose. Several other employees had stopped, forming a small crowd. "Walter, don't do this," Vanessa said, her voice low and urgent. "Please, we can talk privately." "The way we talked privately at Nathan's funeral?" I asked, "when you told me to stop crying and start packing." "No, Vanessa, I think we're past private conversations." I opened the folder and pulled out the first document. "This is the deed to 847 Maple Grove Drive, the house where I've lived for 35 years. The house where I raised Nathan. As you can see, it's owned by Brennan Holdings, LLC. That's my company. It has been since 1989. Vanessa's face had gone pale. "That's not—" "Nathan told me." "Nathan told you what, exactly?" I asked. "That he was paying my mortgage, covering my expenses." "Let me share something else with you, Vanessa. And with all of you, since we're having this public discussion." I pulled out the trust fund records. "For the past 6 years, I've been providing Nathan with monthly distributions from a trust fund. $5,000 a month initially, increased to $15,000 when he got sick. That's not Nathan supporting me, Vanessa. That's me supporting Nathan. Supporting both of you." The silence in that hallway was absolute. Vanessa reached for the documents, but I held them back. "Every vacation you took," I continued, "every dinner at expensive restaurants, the home health aide who actually took care of Nathan while you were at yoga class, the experimental treatments that insurance didn't cover, all of it came from me. $678,000 over 6 years. You're lying, Vanessa said, but her voice was weak. Nathan said, he said you lost your job, that you needed help. I retired 30 years ago, I said. I've been managing my investments ever since, quite successfully as it turns out. Patricia cleared her throat. Vanessa, perhaps you and your father-in-law should take this to a private office. He's not my father-in-law anymore, Vanessa snapped, some of her composure returning. Nathan's dead. He has no legal standing in my life. Actually, I said, pulling out another document, I have considerable legal standing regarding my property. This is a notice to vacate, Vanessa. You have 30 days to remove any of Nathan's belongings you wish to keep from my house. After that, the locks will be changed. You can't do that. I absolutely can. The house is mine. You have no claim to it, no ownership stake, no legal rights whatsoever. My attorney made that very clear in the attached documentation. Vanessa grabbed the papers from my hand, her eyes scanning frantically. I watched the realization dawn on her face, the understanding that she had been completely, utterly wrong. All this time, she whispered, all this time, you let me think. You thought what you wanted to think, I said. You created a narrative that made sense to you, where you were the successful career woman married to the successful accountant, both of you supporting his poor, struggling father. You never asked questions. You never wanted to know the truth. Derek, the young man who'd brought me coffee, spoke up quietly. Vanessa, didn't you say last month that you were looking at condos in Riverside Heights? You showed us the listings, said you were coming into money. Shut up, Derek, Vanessa hissed. But the damage was done. I could see it in the faces around us. Confusion, disappointment, judgment. Patricia looked particularly troubled. This is a family matter, Patricia said firmly. Everyone, back to work. Vanessa, my office, now. As Vanessa followed her supervisor down the hallway, she turned back to look at me, and the expression on her face wasn't anger or embarrassment. It was something else entirely, something calculating. This isn't over, Walter, she called back. You think you've won, but you don't know everything. There are things about Nathan, about our marriage, about your precious son, that you don't know. Things that would break your heart. The elevator doors opened, and I stepped inside, my hands shaking slightly as I pressed the button for the ground floor. Through the closing doors, I saw Vanessa standing in the hallway, her phone already in her hand, typing furiously. My phone buzzed before I reached the lobby. A text from an unknown number. You're going to regret this. Check Nathan's email account. Password is Clearview2019. Then we'll see who's really been supporting whom. I sat in my car in the parking garage for 20 minutes, staring at Vanessa's text message. The smart thing would be to ignore it, to let Gordon handle everything through proper legal channels. But something in her words nagged at me. Things that would break your heart. When I got home, I went straight to my study and opened my laptop. Nathan had given me access to his email years ago, back when he first got sick, in case he needed me to handle something while he was in treatment. The password Vanessa provided was different from the one I remembered, which meant Nathan had changed it at some point. Clearview 2019, the year they got married. The inbox loaded, and I immediately saw why Vanessa had wanted me to look. The most recent emails, from the weeks before Nathan died, were exchanges with someone named Troy Patterson. My hands froze over the keyboard. Patterson, one of Nathan's groomsmen, a college friend who'd given a heartfelt speech at the wedding about brotherhood and loyalty. I clicked on the first email, dated 3 weeks before Nathan's death. Troy, I can't do this anymore. Watching her with you, pretending I don't know. It's killing me faster than the cancer. I've documented everything, the hotel receipts, the text messages. Even the weekend you two spent in Charleston, when she told me she was at her mother's. My father deserves to know who he's been financially supporting all these years. I'm attaching the evidence folder. When I'm gone, please make sure he sees this. She doesn't get to walk away with everything after what she's done to us both. My breath caught in my throat. Us both? I scrolled down, finding more emails, going back months. Nathan laying out everything in careful detail, how he'd discovered Vanessa's affair with Troy 6 months into his cancer treatment, how Troy had confessed that Vanessa had pursued him, how the affair had continued even as Nathan grew sicker. But there was more. So much more. Another email, this one to Nathan's supervisor at the accounting firm, dated 8 months before his diagnosis. Richard, I need to discuss a serious matter confidentially. I've made some errors in judgment with client accounts, specifically the Morrison portfolio. I've been using funds as short-term bridges for personal investments, always replacing them within days, but I'm in over my head now. I need help before this becomes a legal issue. My stomach turned. I clicked through more emails, piecing together a story I didn't want to believe. Nathan had been gambling on cryptocurrency investments, using client funds as collateral, certain he could double the money quickly and solve all his financial problems. He'd gotten in deep with some bad investments, lost nearly $200,000 of client money, and was facing termination and possible prosecution when he got his cancer diagnosis. The diagnosis had saved him in a twisted way. His supervisor at the firm had quietly agreed to cover the losses in exchange for Nathan's resignation, citing medical leave instead of termination. No one wanted to prosecute a dying man, but Nathan hadn't told me any of this. He'd let me believe he was still working, still the responsible, successful son I'd raised. He'd taken my increased trust fund distributions and used them to cover his gambling debts, to maintain appearances, to keep Vanessa from discovering the truth about their finances. I found an email Nathan had sent to himself, dated just 2 weeks before he died. It was titled for Dad. Dad, if you're reading this, it means Vanessa finally showed her true colors. I'm sorry I couldn't tell you any of this in person. I was ashamed. I'd failed at my career, failed at my marriage, failed at being the son you deserved. The truth is, I lost my job months before the cancer diagnosis because I stole from clients. Not stole exactly. I always intended to pay it back. But that's what the law would call it. I was trying to make enough money to impress Vanessa, to give her the lifestyle she expected. Instead, I lost everything and nearly got arrested. Then the cancer came, and suddenly Vanessa was the devoted wife, at least in public. But privately, she'd already checked out. I found out about Troy 6 months ago. I hired a private investigator, got all the evidence. I'm including it in a folder labeled V Evidence in my cloud storage. I know you've been giving me money through the trust fund. I know you increased it when I got sick. I used most of it to pay off my gambling debts, to keep creditors from coming after me, to protect my name even though I didn't deserve protection. I'm asking you to do one last thing for me. When I'm gone, Vanessa is going to try to take everything. She thinks you're poor, thinks I was supporting you, and I never corrected her because I needed her to think I was still successful, still the person she married. Use the evidence against her. Make sure she doesn't profit from my death. But Dad, please don't remember me as a failure. I made terrible choices, but I loved you. I'm sorry I wasn't the son you thought I was." I sat back in my chair, my hands trembling. My phone buzzed. A call from Gordon. "Walter, we have a problem. Vanessa just filed a claim against Nathan's estate, including a demand for half the value of your house. She's claiming common law marriage property rights and citing Nathan's verbal promises to her. It's baseless, but it'll tie things up for months unless we respond aggressively." "Gordon," I said quietly, "I need you to come over. There's something I need to show you." 2 hours later, Gordon sat in my study, reading through Nathan's emails. When he finished, he removed his glasses and rubbed his eyes. "Walter, I'm so sorry. This changes things significantly. If Vanessa knew about Nathan's financial crimes—" "She didn't," I interrupted. "Look at the dates. Nathan hid it from her just like he hid it from me. But she was having an affair, and Nathan documented everything." "Do you want to use this?" Gordon asked carefully. "If we expose the affair, it'll hurt her credibility in court, but it'll also make Nathan's infidelity and financial issues public record." I looked at the photograph on my desk, Nathan at age 10, holding up his first Little League trophy, grinning, proud, innocent. "Nathan asked me to use it," I said. "In his email, he wanted me to make sure she didn't profit from his death." Over the next week, I did exactly what Nathan had asked. Gordon presented the evidence of Vanessa's affair to her attorney, along with proof that she had no legal claim to any of my property. The affair evidence was particularly damaging because Troy Patterson was married, and his wife worked at the same pharmaceutical company as Vanessa. Vanessa's attorney advised her to drop all claims and walk away quietly. She refused initially, until Troy's wife, Angela, showed up at Thorne & Associates and made a scene in the lobby that resulted in security being called. By the end of that day, both Vanessa and Troy had been asked to resign from their positions. Vanessa's blog about Nathan's illness suddenly went private. Her social media accounts, once filled with inspirational posts about widowhood and resilience, disappeared entirely. She came to collect Nathan's belongings 3 days before the deadline I'd given her. I watched from my study window as she loaded Hoxes into a rental truck, her mother helping her, both of them silent and grim-faced. I'd won. Vanessa had been exposed, humiliated, and removed from my life and my property. Justice had been served, just as Nathan had wanted. But as I sat alone in my house that evening, surrounded by 35 years of memories, I didn't feel victorious. I felt hollow. My phone buzzed one last time. A video file from Nathan's cloud storage, labeled Final Message for Dad's eyes only. I almost didn't open it. Some part of me wanted to preserve the memory of my son, as I'd chosen to remember him. Flawed, yes, but ultimately good. But I owed it to Nathan to watch, to hear whatever final words he'd left me. His face appeared on the screen, gaunt from illness, but his eyes were clear and focused. "Hey, Dad," he said, his voice weak but steady. "If you're watching this, you know everything now. The gambling, the money I lost, the affair, all of it. I know you probably feel betrayed, and you should. I betrayed your trust, betrayed everything you taught me about integrity and responsibility. But I need you to understand something. When Mum died, you became so careful with money, so private about our wealth, because you were afraid people would love us for the wrong reasons. You wanted me to make my own way, to be independent, to never rely on money to define me. And I get it. I really do. But Dad, I spent my whole life trying to be worthy of you, trying to be successful enough, smart enough, strong enough that I wouldn't need your money. And when I failed, when I made stupid choices and lost everything, I couldn't bear to tell you. I couldn't stand to see disappointment in your eyes. So I lied. I took your money and pretended I was still successful. I let Vanessa believe I was providing for both of us. I built a whole false life, and it was exhausting, and it was wrong, and I'm so sorry. The one thing I didn't lie about was loving you. Every good thing I ever did, every moment of actual integrity I managed, came from trying to be like you. I just wasn't strong enough to be honest when I failed. I'm asking you to do something now that's going to be hard. Stop Vanessa from profiting from my mistakes. She doesn't deserve it after what she did. But then, when it's over, I need you to do something harder. Forgive me. Not for my sake, I'll be gone, but for yours. Don't let my failures poison the rest of your life. Don't let what I did make you more isolated, more private, more afraid of connecting with people. You spent so much of your life hiding your success because you were afraid. Please don't spend the rest of it hiding your grief because you're ashamed of me. I love you, Dad. I'm sorry I wasn't the son you deserved, but I'm grateful you were the father I needed. The video ended. I sat in the darkness of my study, tears streaming down my face. I'd won against Vanessa. I'd protected my property, exposed the lies, achieved the justice Nathan had asked for. But the victory was ashes in my mouth because my son, my brilliant, troubled, deeply flawed son, had died believing he'd failed me. The truth was more complicated than that. Nathan had made terrible choices. He'd lied, stolen, gambled away money that wasn't his. But he'd also faced his mistakes with more honesty than I'd given him credit for. He'd documented everything, tried to make things right in the only way he could, and died trying to protect me from being taken advantage of. I'd spent 30 years hiding my wealth to protect myself from people's greed. Nathan had spent his adult life hiding his failures to protect himself from my disappointment. We'd both been living behind carefully constructed walls, father and son, each afraid to show the other our full, flawed humanity. 2 weeks later, I received a letter from Angela Patterson, Troy's now ex-wife. She thanked me for the evidence that had helped her divorce proceedings. She also mentioned that Troy had been fired from his job and was facing financial ruin. Vanessa had moved in with her mother and was working at a call center, her corporate communications career apparently over. Everyone involved had paid a price. Justice had been served. But sitting alone in my house, the same house where I'd raised Nathan, where Claire and I had built a life together, where 3 generations of my family had lived and loved and made mistakes, I realized that winning wasn't the same as healing. Nathan had asked me to forgive him. He'd asked me not to let his failures make me more isolated. The next morning, I called Gordon. I want to set up a trust fund, I told him, for financial literacy education and addiction support services. I want to fund it significantly. And Gordon, I want my name on it. No more hiding behind holding companies and private accounts. Nathan Brennan Memorial Trust. Let people know who's funding it and why. Walter, Gordon said carefully, that's going to attract attention. People will start asking questions about your wealth. Good, I said. Let them ask. I'm done hiding. I'd lost my son, exposed my daughter-in-law, and uncovered painful truths about the person I'd loved most in the world. I'd won the battle Nathan had set up for me, but the real victory, I was beginning to understand, would be choosing to live differently than I had before. not hiding behind walls of privacy and fear, but stepping into the light, flaws and failures and all. Nathan had died ashamed of his mistakes. I'd spend the rest of my life making sure his memory did something better, helping other people before their failures destroyed them, before they felt so trapped by their choices that lying seemed like the only option. It wouldn't bring my son back. It wouldn't erase the hurt of discovering how much he'd hidden from me. But it would honor the truth of who Nathan really was. Not the perfect son I'd imagined, not the failure he'd believed himself to be, but a complicated, struggling human being who'd loved me, despite his fear of disappointing me. As I signed the paperwork establishing the trust fund, I thought about what Nathan had said in his video. Don't let what I did make you more isolated. Don't spend the rest of your life hiding. I'd gotten my justice. Vanessa had gotten her comeuppance. Now it was time to figure out how to live with the complicated, painful, honest truth. That's the end of this story. If it touched your heart, please leave a like and subscribe. Have you experienced something similar? Share your story in the comments below.